My sister banned my 7-year-old from her wedding because she didn't match the minimalist vibe, forgetting I was the one paying the $25,000 catering bill. So I quietly canceled the contract, donated the feast to a shelter, and watched her meltdown on the evening news. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The room was spinning, a slow, nauseating rotation that had become my constant companion over the last 3 weeks. I gripped the edge of my granite kitchen island, knuckles turning white, waiting for the vertigo to pass. My doctor had called it acute stress-induced labyrinthitis, a fancy way of saying I had worked myself into the ground. As the owner of Alina's Epicurean, the city's most sought-after boutique catering firm, I didn't know the meaning of a day off. But this dizzy, off-kilter world I was currently inhabiting was my body's way of pulling the emergency brake. I took a deep, shaky breath, the scent of lemon polish and stale coffee filling my nose. I just needed to get through this week, just this 1 week. Then, after Chloe's wedding, I could collapse. I could sleep for a month. "Mommy, look at the spin." The voice pierced the fog in my brain, bright and bell-like. I turned carefully, trying not to trigger another wave of dizziness, and saw my 7-year-old daughter, Mia. She was twirling in the center of the living room, a blur of ivory tulle and silk. She was wearing the flower girl dress I had custom-ordered from Italy 6 months ago. It was a miniature masterpiece, designed to match the bridal gown my sister, Chloe, was wearing. Mia looked like a fairy princess, her dark curls bouncing with every rotation, her face split in a grin so wide it made my heart ache with a fierce, protective love. "It's beautiful, baby," I managed to say, my voice raspier than usual. "You are going to steal the show. Auntie Chloe is going to love it, right?" Mia stopped spinning, slightly breathless, smoothing the skirt with her small, chubby hands. I practiced walking slow, just like she said. Step, step, smile. Step, step, smile. She demonstrated, her focus intense. I smiled, leaning back against the counter. This was it. This was the reward for the 18-hour days, the missed dinners, the exhaustion, seeing my little girl shine at my sister's wedding. The phone on the counter buzzed, vibrating against the marble. The screen lit up with a photo of Chloe and me from 10 years ago, back when I was practically her mother, father, and best friend all rolled into one. I swiped answer. "Hey, Chloe, I was just watching Mia practice her flower girl walk. She's ready for the rehearsal dinner tonight." There was a silence on the other end. Not a peaceful silence, but a heavy, pressurized static that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "Elena," Chloe's voice sounded tight, almost tinny. "Yeah, about that, we need to talk." I frowned, pressing the phone closer to my ear. "Is everything okay? Is it the menu? I told Chef Marco that the truffle risotto has to be plated à la minute. I promise it won't get gummy." "It's not the food," she interrupted, her voice snapping with a strange impatience. "The food is fine. Look, I'm with Jessica right now, and we've been reviewing the final visual mood board for the ceremony and the reception." I rubbed my temple, where a headache was beginning to throb in time with my pulse. Jessica, the maid of honor, the woman who had swooped into Chloe's life 2 years ago and turned my sweet, slightly scatterbrained sister into someone obsessed with curating her existence. "Okay," I said slowly, and we realized that there's a cohesion issue," Chloe said, the words sounding rehearsed as if she were reading from a script. "The aesthetic we're going for is ethereal beige and champagne silence. It's very high concept, Alina, very serious. We want the photos to look like a Vogue editorial. Stark, mature, uncluttered." I looked at Mia, who was now humming to herself, carefully arranging the tulle of her dress. "I don't understand what you're saying, Chloe. The wedding is in 3 days." "I'm saying," Chloe let out a huff of breath, "that kids don't fit the aesthetic. They're messy, they're unpredictable, and visually, they just ruin the lines of the procession. Jessica pointed out that having a child in the photos will date them. It makes it look like a family event instead of an exclusive gala experience. The room stopped spinning, but the floor seemed to drop out from under me. What are you talking about? Mia is your niece. She's the flower girl. We bought the dress. She's been practicing for months. I know, Chloe said dismissively. And that's sweet, really, but we've decided to make the wedding entirely child-free, strictly 21 and over, no exceptions. I gripped the phone so hard my hand shook. Chloe, you cannot be serious. You asked her to be the flower girl a year ago. She is standing in front of me in her dress right now. You want me to tell her she can't come because she ruins your lines. It's not just the lines, Alina. It's the vibe. Chloe's voice rose, shrill and defensive. God, why do you always have to make everything so dramatic? It's my day. Jessica says that if I want to get featured on The Nuptial Minimalist, I can't have a toddler tripping over the aisle runner. She is 7, I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. She is not a toddler, and I am her mother. Does that mean I'm not invited either? Because I certainly can't leave her alone. No, obviously you're invited, Chloe sighed, as if explaining quantum physics to a golden retriever. You just need to get a sitter. Drop her off at mom's friend's house or something. Just don't bring her. Security has been instructed to turn away anyone under 21. I can't risk the live stream being interrupted by a tantrum. I looked at my daughter. Mia caught my eye and beamed, doing a little curtsy. Did Auntie Chloe say hi? She mouthed. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a vice. The vertigo surged back, violent and black. Chloe, I rasped, I am paying for this reception. I am catering this entire event. That is a $25,000 gift. And you're telling me my daughter isn't welcome to eat the food I'm preparing. Don't throw money in my face, Alina, Chloe snapped. That was a gift. Gifts don't come with strings attached, unless you're admitting you only did it to control me. I did it because I love you, I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. I practically raised you. Yeah, well, raise yourself to get a babysitter, she said coldly. The decision is final. Jessica is right. We have to protect the brand of the wedding. See you at the rehearsal. Alone. The line went dead. I lowered the phone, the silence of the kitchen deafening. Mia looked at me, her smile faltering as she saw the expression on my face. Mommy, she asked, her voice small, is Auntie Chloe mad? I looked at my beautiful, innocent girl, and then down at the phone in my hand. The physical sickness I felt was nothing compared to the knife twisting in my heart. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis itself. The next hour was an exercise in agony. I had to sit Mia down on the velvet sofa in the living room, holding her small hands in mine, and break her heart. Baby, I started, brushing a curl away from her forehead. My hands were trembling, and I hid them behind her back. You know how much Auntie Chloe loves you, right? That was a lie. At that moment, I didn't believe Chloe loved anyone but herself and the reflection she saw in her phone screen. But I couldn't tell Mia that. I couldn't let her know that she had been discarded for an aesthetic. Mia nodded eagerly. Yes, because I'm her favorite niece. You are, I choked out, but something has changed with the wedding. The venue, the place where they are having the party, they made a new rule. Mia tilted her head. What rule? They said, no kids allowed, I whispered. It's just for grown-ups now, even for the flower girl. I watched the light drain from her eyes. It wasn't a sudden tantrum. It was a slow, confusing crumble. Her lower lip trembled. She looked down at her dress, the dress she had treated like a sacred object for weeks. But, she stammered, but I practiced the step-step smile. I know, baby, I know. I pulled her into my chest, burying my face in her hair so she wouldn't see me crying. Did I do something bad? She asked into my shoulder, her voice muffled and wet with tears. No, I pulled back, gripping her shoulders firmly. No, Mia, you did nothing wrong. You are perfect. This is just grown-ups being silly and making bad rules. It has nothing to do with you. She cried for an hour. She cried until she was exhausted, and then she fell asleep on the couch, still wearing the $20 tiara she had bought with her allowance money. I sat there watching her sleep, the silence of the house amplifying the ringing in my ears. My head was pounding with a ferocity that made my vision blur. I felt physically ill, my body weak from the vertigo and the stress, but beneath the sickness, something else was igniting. It was a cold, hard ember of rage. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from Chloe. "Please don't make a scene about this, Elle. Just be cool for once. Also, Jessica wanted to know if the servers can wear beige masks instead of black. The black is too harsh against the cream table linens. Thanks." I stared at the screen, not a word of apology, not a question about how Mia took the news, just a demand about the color of the masks for the staff I was paying for. The FF who worked for me. I stood up, fighting the sway of the room, and walked into my home office. The walls were lined with awards: Best Caterer of the Year, Small Business Excellence, Culinary Innovation. I had built this empire from scratch. When our parents died 15 years ago, I was 21 and Chloe was 11. I had dropped out of culinary school to work 2 jobs to keep the house. I had built Alina's Epicurean in the late hours of the night while helping Chloe with her science projects. I had given her everything. I had shielded her from every hardship. And in doing so, I realized with a sick feeling in my gut, I had created a monster. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the darkening room. I navigated to the file labeled Chloe Wedding Master Contract. I scrolled through the document. It was comprehensive. It listed the imported truffles, the Wagyu beef sliders, the champagne tower, the 5-tier lemon elderflower cake. The total cost was $25,400. At the bottom, in the payment section, it read, 100% discount gifted by Alina Vance. But my eyes didn't linger on the total. They drifted to the terms and conditions. It was my standard contract, the one I used for every client, even family. I had insisted on it for insurance purposes. Clause 14b. Clause 14b. The provider, Alina's Epicurean, reserves the right to withdraw services up to 24 hours prior to the event in cases of client harassment, discrimination, abuse of staff, or breach of moral conduct as determined by the provider. I sat back, a dark, humorless smile touching my lips. Chloe and Jessica thought they were the queens of the world. They thought they could curate people out of their lives like deleting a bad photo. They thought that because I was the big sister, I would just roll over, take the disrespect, and serve them their Wagyu beef on a silver platter. They were focused on the aesthetic. They were focused on the photos. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten that you don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially when that hand wrote the contract. To understand why this betrayal cut so deep, you have to understand the history. Our parents died in a car accident when I was just starting my life. I didn't even hesitate. I moved back home, took custody of Chloe, and became a mother overnight. I didn't date in my 20s because I was driving Chloe to soccer practice. I didn't travel because I was saving for her college fund. When I started my catering business, it was out of our tiny kitchen, chopping onions until 3 a.m. so I could afford to buy her the prom dress she wanted. I never resented it. She was my sister. She was my heart. But things changed 2 years ago when she met Jessica. Jessica wasn't just a friend. She was a lifestyle consultant. That was her actual job title. She was a woman who had monetized her entire existence. She was 30, beautiful in a sharp, terrifyingly symmetrical way, and had a gaze that assessed the price tag of everything it landed on. I remember the first time I met her properly. It was at the initial wedding planning brunch 6 months ago. I had offered to cater the wedding as my gift, a massive undertaking that would require my entire staff for a weekend. We were at a trendy bistro. I was wearing my chef's whites because I had come straight from a tasting. Jessica was wearing a beige linen suit that probably cost more than my car. So, Jessica had said, looking at me over the rim of her sunglasses, "You're the caterer or the sister?" "Both," I smiled, trying to be friendly. "I own the company." Cute, she said, not smiling back. She turned to Chloe. Chloe, babe, we need to talk about the food presentation. Elena's stuff is hearty, it's very comfort food. But for your brand, we need sculptural. Can we make sure nothing looks edible? It needs to look like art. I laughed, thinking she was joking. Well, people do need to eat, Jessica. It's a wedding, not a museum. Jessica didn't laugh. She just tapped her long, manicured fingernail on the table. Chloe, remember what we discussed. The wedding is the launchpad for your lifestyle blog. If the food looks greasy or heavy, it ruins the narrative. Chloe had looked at me, pleading with her eyes. Elle, can you just make it look really fancy? Please. Jessica knows what she's doing. She has 200,000 followers. That was the beginning. Over the next few months, I watched Jessica slowly strip away everything that made Chloe unique. Chloe used to love bright colors, now she only wore neutrals. Chloe used to laugh loud and snort, now she practiced a quiet chuckle. And then came the meeting about Mia. It was 2 weeks ago. I hadn't realized the significance of it at the time. We were at the venue doing a walkthrough. Mia was with us, skipping around the empty ballroom. Jessica had been watching Mia with a look of pure distaste. Not annoyance, distaste, like Mia W. As a stain on a silk shirt. She's very high energy, Jessica had commented, sipping her iced coffee. She's 7, I said defensively. She's excited. It's just that during the vows, the camera angle needs to be unobstructed, Jessica said, framing the air with her hands. If she's fidgeting, or if her dress is too poof, it's going to pull focus from Chloe. And let's be honest, the kid is a bit of a distraction. She doesn't really fit the sleek vibe we're building. I had stepped in front of Jessica then. My daughter is not a prop, she is family. Jessica had just smirked, a cold, dead expression that didn't reach her eyes. Everything is a prop, Elena. That's what you don't understand. Life is content. If it doesn't look good in the square, it doesn't belong in the frame. I had brushed it off as influencer nonsense. I thought Chloe had enough sense to ignore her. But sitting here in my office, the contract glowing on my screen, I realized I had been wrong. Jessica was the puppet master, but Chloe, my sister, the girl I had raised, had willingly cut the strings that bound us together. She had chosen the content over the family. She had chosen the lie over the love. I looked at the clock. It was Tuesday night. The wedding was Saturday. The prep work was scheduled to start in my commercial kitchen tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Thousands of dollars of ingredients were sitting in my walk-in coolers. I picked up my phone. I wasn't going to call Chloe. I wasn't going to beg. I dialed my lawyer first. Then, I dialed the director of the St. Jude's Children's Shelter downtown. Hello, the director answered, sounding surprised to hear from me so late. Hi, Sarah, I said, my voice steady for the first time all day. It's Elena Vance. I have a strange question. How many kids are currently in the shelter, and how do they feel about 5-tier lemon elderflower cake and Wagyu beef sliders? The morning after the phone call, I didn't stay in bed. I didn't wallow. The vertigo was still there, a low-grade hum at the base of my skull, but I shoved it aside with the ruthless efficiency that had kept my business alive for a decade. I had a plan, but before I pulled the trigger, I needed to be absolutely certain of my target. I arrived at Elena's Epicurean headquarters at 6:00 a.m. The kitchen was already alive, the rhythmic thwack-thwack-thwack of knives hitting cutting boards, the hiss of stockpots simmering, the sharp, yeasty smell of rising dough. My staff, a team of 20 culinary artists I treated like family, looked up as I entered. They knew the wedding was this weekend. They knew it was for my sister. They expected me to be glowing with familial pride. Instead, I walked straight to my office and locked the door. I sat at my desk, the mahogany cool under my palms, and pulled up the vendor list Chloe had shared with me months ago. Jessica had insisted on managing the ecosystem of the wedding, meaning she selected the florist, the lighting designers, the rental company for the linens. At the time, I was relieved to have the help. Now, I saw it for what it was, a firewall. I started making calls. My first call was to Henry, a florist I had worked with for 7 years. He was one of the best in the city, known for his cascading orchid installations. "Elena, mon chéri," Henry answered on the second ring. "I assume you are calling about the sisters' wedding? The flowers are packed, 50 shades of beige, just as the general requested." "The general?" I asked, my pen hovering over a notepad. "The maid of honor, Jessica," Henry snorted. "A charming woman, and by charming I mean she has the warmth of a cryogenic freezer. She demanded a 20% coordination fee be added to my invoice, payable directly to her LLC. I told her I do not do kickbacks, but she threatened to pull the contract and badmouth me on TikTok. So I buried the cost in the labor charge." I froze. "Wait," she demanded a kickback from you. "From everyone, darling," Henry said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "The lighting guys, the DJ, the venue. She told us all that if we wanted the exposure of this wedding, we had to pay the Jessica tax. We assumed you knew. We thought that was how the sisters' budget was being managed." I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. "I didn't know, Henry. Send me the emails, all of them." I spent the next 4 hours digging. It wasn't just an aesthetic obsession, it was a grift. Jessica was bleeding my sister dry. I logged into the shared wedding budget spreadsheet, a document I had access to because I had deposited the initial deposit for the venue 6 months ago. I cross-referenced the invoices Henry sent me with the spreadsheet. It was a masterclass in fraud. Jessica had marked up every single service by 30%, paid the vendors their rate minus her kickback, and pocketed the difference. The vintage champagne budget? It was actually for mid-range sparkling wine, but Chloe was B. Ing charged for Dom Perignon prices. The custom silk napkins? Polyester blends from a wholesale site, marked up 400%. My sister wasn't just being manipulated emotionally, she was being robbed. But the smoking gun came from a frantic Google search of Jessica's name, combined with scam and lawsuit. It took some digging. She had paid a reputation management firm to scrub the first few pages of search results, but on page 6 I found it. A forum for disgruntled brides in Lowe's Angels. There was a thread titled, "The Minimalist Nightmare, How Jessica B. Ruined My Wedding." The stories were identical. She would befriend a bride, isolate her from family by claiming they didn't understand the vision, ban children to ensure clean visuals, and then disappear the day after the wedding with thousands of dollars in consulting fees, leaving the bride with a generic, beige, soulless event and a mountain of debt. She was a parasite, and my sister was the host. I printed everything. The emails from Henry, the side-by-side invoice comparisons, the forum posts. I put them in a thick manila folder. Then I called Sarah at the shelter back. "It's a go," I said, my voice trembling slightly with the magnitude of what I was about to do. "I need you to clear the cafeteria. We're bringing linens, china, the works. I don't want this to look like a charity handout. I want those kids to feel like they are dining at the Ritz." "Elena," Sarah breathed, "are you sure this is tens of thousands of dollars?" "I'm sure," I said, looking at the photo of Mia on my desk. "And Sarah, can you call that contact you have at Channel 4, the one who did the piece on the shelter's funding crisis last year? Tell them you have a human interest story. Tell them Christmas is coming early." The rehearsal dinner was held that night at a downtown loft space that felt less like a celebration venue and more like a sterile art gallery. The walls were bare concrete. The tables were clear acrylic. There were no flowers, only dead branches painted white in tall glass vases. It was cold, echoing, and utterly joyless. I walked in alone. I was wearing a sharp black jumpsuit and my highest heels, armor for the battle to come. The room was sparsely populated with Chloe's friends, most of whom were on their phones, and the groom's family, who looked bewildered and uncomfortable on the ghost chairs. I spotted Chloe near the bar. She looked beautiful, but brittle. Her weight had dropped significantly in the last month, her collarbones sharp enough to cut glass. She was sipping a clear liquid from a square glass, looking anxiously around the room. Jessica was hovering over her shoulder, whispering something and pointing at the lighting rig. I took a deep breath, clutching the manila folder against my side, and marched over. "Hello, Chloe," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the cavernous space. Chloe jumped, spinning around. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "Elle, you came. I wasn't sure if you would." "I'm your sister," I said, my tone even. "I'm here." I looked at Jessica. "Can we have a moment? Family only." Jessica didn't move. She smiled, a tight, condescending stretching of lips. "We don't have secrets here, Alina. We're a team. Anything you have to say to Chloe, you can say to me. I am the maid of honor, after all." "This is about the wedding finances," I said, locking eyes with her. "And your consulting practices." Jessica's smile didn't falter, but her eyes went flat. "I think you're confused. I'm doing this out of love for Chloe." "Is that what you call a 20% kickback on the florist?" I asked, slapping the folder onto the acrylic bar table. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. "Is that what you call marking up polyester napkins by 400%? Chloe looked from me to the folder, then to Jessica. What is she talking about?" "Open it, Chloe," I urged, my voice softening. "Please, look at the invoices. Look at the emails from Henry. She is stealing from you. She is isolating you from me, from Mia, from Mom's friends, just so she can control the budget and squeeze every dime out of you. She's done this before. Look at the forum posts." Chloe's hand trembled as she reached for the folder. She opened it, her eyes scanning the highlighted numbers. I saw the confusion on her face, the dawning realization. "Jess," Chloe whispered, looking at the invoice comparison. Why does the lighting bill say $3,000 here, but the email from the company says $1,500? For a second, I thought I had won. I thought the spell was broken. But Jessica was a professional predator. She didn't panic. She laughed. A soft, pitying laugh that made my skin crawl. "Oh, honey," Jessica cooed, placing a hand on Chloe's shoulder. "Is this what this is about? Alina is jealous. She's trying to sabotage you right before your big day because she can't handle that you've outgrow. WN her little mommy dynamic." "The numbers, Jessica," I snapped. "Explain the numbers." "It's called an administration fee, Alina," Jessica said smoothly, turning to Chloe. "I handled all the logistics so you wouldn't be stressed. Do you know how many hours I spent on the phone? Do you think my time is worthless? I saved you from having to deal with these tradespeople. And frankly, looking at this," she gestured disdainfully at the folder, "it's pathetic that your sister spent her time digging up dirt instead of supporting you. She's trying to ruin your mental health 2 days before the wedding. That is toxic behavior, Chloe, classic narcissism." Chloe looked at the papers, then at Jessica's composed face, and then at me. I saw the struggle in her eyes, the cognitive dissonance. To believe me meant admitting she had been a fool for 2 years. To believe me meant her perfect wedding was a lie. It was easier to believe the lie. Chloe slammed the folder shut. "Stop it, Alina." "Chloe, please," I begged, stepping forward. "She banned Mia because she wanted to see how much control she had. It's a test. If you let her do this, if you let her cut off your family, she wins. Look at the facts." "The fact is that you are ruining my rehearsal dinner," Chloe shouted, her voice cracking. The room went silent. Everyone was staring. "Jessica warned me you would do this. She said you'd try to make it about yourself. You're jealous because I'm not your little doll anymore." "I am trying to protect you," I yelled back, losing my composure. "I am paying for this entire reception. I am the only one here who actually cares about you, not the aesthetic." "Then stop paying," Chloe screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I don't care. I don't need your money. I don't need your catering. If it comes with this much emotional blackmail, keep it. Jessica said we could find a better caterer anyway, one that matches the visual brand better." Jessica smirked behind Chloe's back. It was a microscopic expression, a tiny quirk of the lip that said checkmate. I looked at my sister. I saw the stranger she had become. I saw the fear and the pride that were blinding her. and I realized that words weren't going to save her. Only a crash landing would do that. "You don't need my catering," I asked quietly. "No," Chloe spat, "I don't." "And you're sure about that? You want me to leave?" "Get out," Chloe hissed. "And don't come back unless you're ready to apologize to Jessica and sit quietly in the back without your bratty kid." I picked up the folder. I didn't look at Jessica. I looked only at Chloe. "Okay," I said. "I love you, Chloe. Remember that I love you." I turned and walked out of the cold, gray loft. As I pushed through the heavy glass doors into the night air, I pulled my phone from my pocket. I opened the email draft I had prepared earlier. The subject line was, "Notice of Contract Termination, Clause 14B. I hit send. The next 36 hours were a blur of controlled chaos. When I terminated a contract, I didn't just stop cooking. I had to dismantle a logistical beast. But in this case, I wasn't dismantling it, I was redirecting it. Saturday morning, the day of the wedding, dawned bright and clear. A perfect day for a wedding, or a perfect day for a reckoning. At the Alina's Epicurean Kitchens, the mood was electric. My staff had been briefed. They knew about Mia. They knew about the insults, and they were fiercely loyal. "Chef," Marco called out, adjusting his toque. "The Wagyu sliders are prepped, but per your instructions, we've switched the presentation. Instead of the silver platters, we're loading them into the warming transporters for the shelter buffet line." "Perfect," I said, buttoning my chef's coat. "And the cake?" "The 5-tier lemon elderflower is boxed," the pastry chef confirmed. "We had to take the Chloe and Mark topper off. I replaced it with a sugar-spun sculpture of a heart." "Beautiful," I said. At 10:00 a.m., my phone started blowing up. It was Jessica. "Where is the setup crew? The venue coordinator says the kitchen is empty. You were supposed to be load in at 8 a.m. I ignored it. At 10:15 a.m., "Alina, stop playing games. We need the water glasses set for the photos. Send the crew now." At 10:30 a.m., Chloe called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message, her voice trembling with panic. "Elle, Jessica says your trucks aren't there. This isn't funny. I know we fought, but you can't just not show up. Please call me." I listened to the message, a pang of guilt striking my heart. But then I looked at Mia, who was sitting in the corner of my office coloring. She wasn't crying anymore, but she was subdued, her spirit dampened by the rejection. I remembered Jessica's smirk. I remembered the kickbacks. I remembered kids ruin the aesthetic. I texted Chloe back a single image. It was a screenshot of the Clause 14B termination, notice I had emailed her, and Jessica 2 nights ag. Oh, the email they had clearly ignored in their arrogance, assuming I wouldn't dare follow through. "I told you I was protecting you," I typed. "I am removing the toxicity from my life. The contract is void." The trucks were idling in the loading dock. 3 massive refrigerated vans, usually emblazoned with my logo. Today, they were carrying $25,000 worth of gourmet food, high-end linens, crystal glassware, and a team of 20 waiters dressed in impeccable blacks. But we didn't turn left toward the luxury hotel downtown. We turned right toward the industrial district, toward the St. Jude's Children's Shelter. I rode in the lead truck. As we pulled up to the shelter, I saw the line. Sarah hadn't just cleared the cafeteria, she had set up the courtyard. There were balloons, there was music playing from a boombox, and there were kids, dozens of them, staring wide-eyed as the fleet of trucks rolled in. We unloaded with military precision. My staff set up the tables with the same care they would have used for a celebrity gala. We laid out the crisp white linens. We set the silver. We plated the truffle risotto and the Wagyu sliders. It was magnificent. At 4:00 p.m., the wedding ceremony was supposed to be ending. By my calculation, the guests would be arriving at the reception venue right about now. They would be walking into the grand ballroom, expecting hors d'oeuvres and champagne. Instead, they would find bare tables. No linens, no glasses, no food, no staff. Just an empty, echoing room that cost $10,000 to rent and had absolutely nothing inside it. My phone buzzed again. It was a picture from a friend of mine who was a guest at the wedding and who had been sworn to secrecy. The photo showed the ballroom. It looked like an abandoned warehouse. Guests were standing around in confusion, holding their purses. In the background, I could see Chloe in her wedding dress, face buried in her hands, while Jessica screamed at a venue manager who was shrugging helplessly. But the real blow was yet to come. "Alina," Sarah waved at me from the shelter gates. "They're here." I walked out to meet her. A news van from Channel 4 had just pulled up. A reporter I recognized, a sharp woman named Monica, jumped out with a cameraman. "Is this Alina Vance?" Monica asked, microphone in hand. "We heard reports of a massive donation. High-end wedding catering being redirected to the shelter." "That's right," I said, smoothing my apron. "Can you tell us why?" she asked, the camera light blinking red. I looked directly into the lens. I knew Chloe was glued to her phone. I knew Jessica lived for media coverage. I knew that within 20 minutes, someone at that disastrous, hungry wedding would see this live stream. "Well," I said, my voice steady and strong. "My company, Alina's Epicurean, believes that food should be served with love. Unfortunately, the original event this food was intended for lacked that essential ingredient. The organizers felt that family, specifically children, didn't fit their aesthetic. They wanted a picture-perfect wedding, even if it meant excluding the people who loved them most." I gestured to the courtyard behind me, where Mia was laughing, handing a cupcake to a little boy with a scraped knee. "So," I continued, a small, sad smile playing on my lips, "I decided that if children weren't good enough for the wedding, then the wedding wasn't good enough for my food. I brought the party where it would be appreciated, because here, the aesthetic is just fine." The segment aired live on the 5:00 p.m. news. I didn't need to guess what was happening at the wedding venue. I was getting a play-by-play via text from my spy. "OMG, someone just played the clip on their phone near the head table. The groom looks furious. Chloe is hyperventilating. Jessica is trying to claim you're doing this for clout. It's a disaster. People are leaving to go get drive-through." At the shelter, the atmosphere was the polar opposite. It was pure, unadulterated joy. The kids, many of whom had never seen a meal like this, were devouring the gourmet sliders and staring in awe at the chocolate fountain we had set up. Mia was the queen of the ball, her earlier heartbreak forgotten as she led a group of toddlers in a dance circle. But the climax wasn't the party. The climax was the arrival. Around 6:30 p.m., a sleek white limousine screeched to a halt in front of the shelter. It was so out of place against the graffitied brick walls and the chain-link fence that the entire courtyard went silent. The back door flew open and Chloe stormed out. She was still in her wedding dress, but the train was gray with dirt from the parking lot. Her veil was askew. Her makeup was streaked with tears. Close behind her, stumbling in heels that were too high for the cracked pavement, was Jessica. "Alina," Chloe screamed, her voice raw, "what have you done?" The news crew, who had been packing up, immediately swung their cameras. Back around, the red light flicked on. This was gold, a bride in full regalia screaming at a children's shelter. I stepped forward, wiping my hands on a towel. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I fed the hungry, Chloe. What did you do?" "You ruined my wedding," Chloe shrieked, gesturing wildly at the shelter courtyard. "You stole my catering, my guests are starving, you petty, jealous witch." "I didn't steal anything," I said calmly, conscious of the rolling cameras. "I exercised Clause 14B of our contract, breach of moral conduct. You allowed your consultant to insult my child, embezzle your money, and treat your family like props. I told you I wouldn't support that." "Embezzle?" Jessica stepped forward, her face a mask of indignation. "Be careful, Alina, that's slander. I'll sue you for every penny you have." "It's not slander if it's true," I said. I reached into my bag, the bag I had kept by my side all day, and pulled out the manila folder. I walked over to Chloe. "I tried to show you this at the rehearsal," I said softly. "You wouldn't look now." Chloe stared at me, her chest heaving. The guests were gone, the party was dead, she had nothing left to lose. She snatched the folder. She opened it. She stood there in the fading evening light, the sounds of the shelter children playing in the background, and she read. She read the emails where Jessica called her a gullible cash cow. She read the inflated invoices. She saw the side-by-side comparison of the Jessica tax. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Jessica watched Chloe, her confidence starting to crack. "Chloe, don't read that trash," Jessica said, her voice taking on a desperate edge. "She forged it. She's lying." Chloe looked up from the papers. Her eyes were dark, filled with a sudden, terrifying clarity. She looked at Jessica, really looked at her for the first time in 2 years. She saw the coldness, the calculation. "You charged me $3,000 for lighting," Chloe whispered, "and you paid them $1,500. "It was a coordination fee," Jessica insisted. "That's industry standard." "And the florist," Chloe's voice rose. "And the linens, you told me the budget was tight. You told me I couldn't afford to invite my cousins because of the per-head cost, but you were stealing the difference." "I made you an influencer," Jessica yelled, dropping the act. "I built your brand. Who cares about a few $1,000s? You were going to be famous." "I don't want to be famous," Chloe screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. "I wanted to be married. I wanted my sister. I wanted my niece." Chloe turned to the cameraman, who was filming everything. Then she turned back to Jessica. "Get out of my face," Chloe said, her voice shaking with rage. "Get away from me. If I ever see you again, I will call the police." Jessica sneered. She looked around at the shelter, at the dirty pavement, at me. "Fine, have your little poverty party. You two deserve each other. You're both basic." She turned on her heel and stalked back to the limo. But the driver, who had been leaning against the hood listening, crossed his arms. "Ride's over, lady," the driver said. "The bride paid the deposit. You're not on the list." Jessica stood there, stranded in the industrial district, humiliated as the limo pulled away. She had to call an Uber while the news crew filmed her tapping furiously on her phone. Chloe stood alone in the parking lot, the fight drained out of her. She looked at me, then past me, to where Mia was peeking out from behind the gate. Chloe fell to her knees in her ruined dress and began to sob. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Jessica. The news segment went viral within hours. The shelter wedding became a top trending topic, but not in the way Jessica had intended. The internet detectives did their work. Within a day, dozens of other brides came forward with their own stories of Jessica's scams. She was effectively blacklisted from the event industry overnight. Last I heard, she was facing a class action lawsuit and had deleted all her social media accounts. For Chloe, the road was harder. Her wedding was ruined. There was no reception, no first dance, no cake cutting. The groom, Mark, was shaken but supportive once he saw the evidence of the theft. They ended up having a quiet dinner at a diner that night, just the two of them in their wedding clothes. But the real healing happened the next day. I was in my kitchen, making coffee, the vertigo finally gone. There was a knock at the door. It was Chloe. She wasn't wearing beige. She was wearing an old, oversized sweatshirt she had stolen from me years ago and a pair of jeans. Her eyes were swollen. She didn't say anything. She just walked in and hugged me. She held on tight, like she used to when we were kids and the thunder scared her. "I'm so sorry," she wept into my shoulder. "I'm so sorry. I lost my mind. I let her get in my head. I treated you like garbage. I treated Mia like nothing." I held her, stroking her hair. I know. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, pulling back and wiping her nose. "I owe you $25,000. I'll pay it back. I'll get a second job." "You don't owe me the money," I said sternly. "The money went to a good cause, but you do owe Mia an apology, a big one." Chloe nodded vigorously. "I know. Is she here?" Mia was in the living room. When she saw Chloe, she hesitated. The memory of the rejection was still there. Chloe knelt down on the floor, right at Mia's level. "Mia," she said, her voice trembling. "Auntie Chloe was very, very stupid. I made a bad rule, and I am so sorry I hurt your feelings. You are the most beautiful flower girl in the world, and a wedding without you is just a boring meeting." Mia looked at her, assessing. Then, with the infinite capacity for forgiveness that only children possess, she stepped forward. "It's okay, Auntie Chloe. Mommy gave the food to the kids who didn't have any. It was a good party." Chloe laughed through her tears. "Yeah, it was." We spent the rest of the afternoon on the couch, watching cartoons. Bright, loud, chaotic cartoons that would have ruined any minimalist aesthetic. 6 months later, Chloe and Mark had a do-over. It wasn't a wedding, it was a backyard barbecue. There were no hashtags, there was no vision. There were just mismatched chairs, coolers full of beer, and my famous barbecue ribs. And running through the middle of it all, wearing a superhero cape over her party dress, was Mia. She was loud. She was messy. She knocked over a cup of punch. And when Chloe saw it, she didn't worry about the photos. She just laughed, picked Mia up, and spun her around until they were both dizzy with joy. The aesthetic was ruined, but the picture was finally perfect.